Nynke Kruiderink. I'm the National Project Lead for Centers for Teaching and Learning in the Netherlands, and I work in a national program called Npuls. Npuls is financed by a National Growth Innovation Fund from the Ministry of Economics, and it's focused on all three levels of tertiary education in the Netherlands. That's 105 educational institutions, vocational educational training, research-based universities, and applied science all together. This is the first national program in the Netherlands where these three sectors work together in a national educational program. And the goal is to build an educational sector that supports a resilient society, broad prosperity, and strong economy. I could talk to you 2 hours about Npuls. There's a lot to say. But for the structure of my project, the Centers for Teaching and Learning, it's important to understand this is an 8-year program with several different goals, and one of them is to develop a national, or develop, further strengthen, I should say, a national knowledge infrastructure. And one of the key elements of the national knowledge infrastructure are the Centers for Teaching and Learning. I'd like to also add the quote, a quote from Richard Mayer, his presentation yesterday, wherein he said, "The business world moves faster than education." And this is also one of the core reasons why we have this Npuls program in the Netherlands, because our educational system has to adapt and be more agile and learn quicker. And this is one of the goals of Npuls, to ensure that we facilitate the learning in our educational institutions. And since we're working with such different parties, different sectors, we try to communicate our ambitions in pictures. Sometimes it helps to illustrate our ambition. And this is a picture wherein we illustrate what is a national knowledge infrastructure. You should interpret the word infrastructure, by the way, as a concept, not as an actual architecture. So here we have the national knowledge infrastructure displayed as an infinity loop, meaning the knowledge is being created and shared and exchanged in this infinity loop. And you see the Centers for Teaching and Learning on this infinity loop displayed in different ways, as a school bus, as a fast train, as bicycles. And herein we are already taking our first position, and that is that Centers for Teaching and Learning are very different. And they have to be different because they have to be relevant within the context of their educational institutions. And that's okay. And I'll get back to what a Center for Teaching and what the similarities are in Centers for Teaching and Learning. And also I just wanted to add this knowledge infrastructure is also based on a theoretical model, the Seiki model of knowledge dimensions, which also explains how we can move from tacit knowledge to explicit knowledge using expertise and research together to strengthen our knowledge in the educational institutions. Just a brief mention that this is one of the bases of the concept of the knowledge infrastructure. Now, you can get lost in models and details and everything, but I like to keep life simple. And actually, the main goal of a Center for Teaching and Learning is to help our educational institutions become better learning organizations. We all know the expression, "Doctor, heal thyself," the plumber has leaking faucets at home, and teachers are also research has shown us that a lot of time teachers, they're very passionate, but they're not per se the population that is the most flexible and agile in terms of refreshing their own teaching expertise, because they're very focused on their content of what they're teaching, which we all can relate to and understand. So they need help in this. They need help in the structure around them that they're fostered in this learning organization and increase their learning, thereby making our educational system stronger. We've also, in our project, we've also based our activities on previous research that has been done, for example, by Andrea Kotman, who has, in her PhD research, also developed two models which show, these are theoretical models, again, because there are all kinds of CTLs, but having a theoretical model helps you to learn where am I right now as an educational institution, and these models also show the caveats and problems that exist when you have, for example, a very centrally based Center for Teaching and Learning or a very networked based teaching and learning. So if you want to strengthen your center or create one, it helps to use existing research and also to understand what the impact of the different choices for the model of the Center for Teaching and Learning in your institution will have. But as we work in education, we all also know that it's quite difficult to bring change. I've heard the expression that trying to get something to change in education is like herding cats. It's almost impossible. Everyone is flying in different ways. And also in the Netherlands, the educational system is very autonomous. Institutions can choose what they teach and how they teach it, and teachers in the institutions are also extremely autonomous in the choices that they make. So there aren't a lot of people in the educational system in the Netherlands that have a mandate to instruct. We will now all become digital literate and go for this certificate. I mean, we will have train strikes and school strikes and people will stay home. So this is not the way to go. We have to facilitate and convince people that having a Center for Teaching and Learning is good and makes sense. And how do we do this? Again, using pictures. This is the way that within our national project, we define what a Center for Teaching and Learning is. We keep it very small. Center for Teaching and Learning is basically to strengthen and support teachers. And then we have 5 objectives that we've identified for Centers for Teaching and Learning. They're teacher professional development, knowledge sharing, educational innovation, and research into educational innovation. These are displayed in the trees. And below the trees are the roots. Because of course, it's not as if we don't do educational innovation if you don't have a Center for Teaching and Learning. Yes, we do. A lot of times the creation of a Center for Teaching and Learning is consolidating all the efforts that are happening in the different departments in an institution. Even knowing what's going on in an educational institution with 50,000 students is quite a challenge. But if we put more effort into consolidating these activities, we become faster learning organizations. So a Center for Teaching and Learning absolutely has to involve all the different departments in the educational institution, like HR, like leadership in education, like the finance department, etc. So we have to work together. And you see the the infinity loop at the top of the trees, which implies the knowledge broker role of a Center for Teaching and Learning. Excuse me, that didn't help. Okay. I think I'm better now. Thank you. I'm not sure if everyone's... Thank you very much. If everyone's familiar with the term knowledge broker, but it's like a real estate agent bringing demand and what's available together. I was just recently last week talking to someone about the job title information manager. I think most of our educational institutions have information managers. Why don't we have knowledge managers? Why? Managing knowledge is one of the new challenges of the 21st century. We need to focus on this and build expertise so that we can build our learning organizations, our educational institutions into learning organizations. So this is also one of the goals of the Centers for Teaching and Learning, is to network nationally and internationally and be engaged in the changing world around us so that our education helps us to actually deal with the complex problems in the world around us. And you also see in the picture the other small groups of trees, because the idea is, of course, that the Centers for Teaching and Learning also interact with each other. But again, if you're herding cats, you're not there with one picture, right? How do we get 105 educational institutions in the Netherlands to work together and create Centers for Teaching and Learning that collaborate, et cetera, et cetera? Well, luckily, someone in developing this national program, Npuls, realized that we really needed to make this a grassroots movement, a bottom-up movement. So there's subsidy for every educational institution in the Netherlands, all 105, to apply for money to create a Center for Teaching and Learning or further develop one. 500,000 euros is available to work on your Center for Teaching and Learning. But there's also, if you get the subsidy, and that's 500,000 for 3 years, you have also a commitment to join the Npuls facilitation, which will also take place for 3 years. And in that facilitation, we're sharing knowledge, we're facilitating the sharing of knowledge, and we're creating new networks within the Netherlands to foster and strengthen that knowledge infrastructure. So this is one of the strategies that we're applying. And also, by the way, this is our CTL magazine, which is also available in English online with the QR code. One of the things I wanted to say is in the subsidy, one of the pillars of the subsidy is that the educational institution has to demonstrate how they are working together with other educational institutions. Remember, this is the first program with all 3 levels, types of educational institutions together. And we've been seeing amazing movement in the Netherlands the past 2 years of new CTL knowledge networks being created, because this awareness has been raised that we have to do this together, we can't do this alone. So you see here a picture of the Netherlands and displaying the different knowledge networks that have been created from a grassroots perspective. We did not instruct them. They found each other in the regions or in existing collaborations. They created new CTL networks. In the north, we have a vertical network, we call it, because it's a research university with several applied science universities and VET schools that come together. They visit each other's campuses, and they share information on how are you training your teachers to deal with AI? How are you bringing digital literacy to your teachers? What are the strategies you're using? And by the way, can I use your guidance file for my school because it's very useful, right? We're not reinventing the wheel everywhere. That would be helpful. So we're very excited about this movement. And actually in December we had identified 10, and now there are 2 new ones. So you're seeing that it's still happening. Schools are finding each other in these networks. And what we're also doing, like I explained, if you receive the subsidy, you are participating in the facilitation from Npuls for the duration of 3 years. And the time commitment is half a day a month. Sounds doable, right? Half a day a month. We've consolidated that into 5 full days. So spread throughout the year, we have 5 full days where all the representatives of the institutions who have received this subsidy, they come together. We facilitate learning amongst them. We bring expertise in. We create open spaces where they can exchange knowledge, and we have topics that we are discussing throughout the year. We start with the topic of learning organization. What is that actually, and how can we facilitate becoming a better learning organization? Also with the use of theory of change. We discuss the governance of a CTL. What can that look like? What does it look like? What helps? What doesn't? How to organize educational innovation, how to organize teacher support, and how to organize research into educational innovation, because this is what these centers are doing, right? In our institution, they're organizing and supporting all this kind of knowledge sharing and exchanging within the educational institution. So that's what we're doing for the cohort that received the subsidy. And the ambition is that all 105 institutions receive the subsidy and go through this cohort program. And we're also, besides that, the movement is bigger. It's bigger than the institutions that now have subsidy, right? Because it's an 8-year program, and we want to make a sustainable change in the Netherlands. So we're also now facilitating in many different ways already this knowledge broker role that educational institutions can take. And we're seeing beautiful results. In the south of the Netherlands this year, 9 educational institutions, again a grassroots initiative, they worked together to create a month-long program on AI in education. Beautiful. I mean, I get chills when I say, you know, a real grassroots movement in how they're sharing knowledge. And in this way, we can increase our knowledge on AI in education across the institutional boundaries. And from my team, we're giving monthly webinars. This year, the topic was how to be a knowledge broker as a CTL. So we discussed how do CTLs relate to educational technology or digital learning materials or XR, etc. And they're all recorded and saved and provided on YouTube in Dutch, I'm afraid, but again, we have tools to translate. And next year, because I'm seeing all this grassroots movement in the Netherlands, we will be doing a much more bottom-up approach to our monthly webinars, but again, facilitating the knowledge sharing and exchanging. But, you know, this sounds great, it's wonderful, it makes me very happy when I see these things happen, but we're also dealing with systemic problems. I hope everyone's familiar with the research from Ruth Graham. She did an international research into research-based universities, illustrating how teaching performance can affect your career in the first 10 years of being an academic teacher at a research university, and it can affect your career in the last 10 years while at a research university. But for 30 years, a teacher can do absolutely nothing in further developing their teaching and have zero negative impact on their career. You can throw all kinds of support to teachers, but if they have no career opportunities, then we will keep seeing, as we know, the usual suspects who are intrinsically motivated to innovate. We're all familiar with these types. But we also need to change the system so that we facilitate actually this attitude and behavior of we need to be learning and changing and adapting, and it's not okay to teach the same way for 30 years. In the Netherlands, as I said, we have these 3 levels of education, and I'd like to reflect here on the problem between being certified versus being competent. Because I don't know if you're familiar, but a few years ago, the higher you go in education, the less certification you need to teach, right? And thankfully, we're changing that. Thankfully, now in the Netherlands, we do have some basic certification necessary also for research university teachers, and also in the applied science sector and in the VET sector. But if that's all we have, just one certification at the beginning of a career, how do we ensure that our teachers keep learning if it's not part of the system? This is a point that I'd like to make that we're struggling with. Another thing we're struggling with that we're all familiar with as well is teachers have a lot of work. It's very complicated. Systems are changing, the world is changing, the students are changing, there's more work, there's less teachers, less money. How? How are we going to do this? But this is also the beautiful thing, I think, of a Center for Teaching and Learning, because it can be a champion for the teacher in the educational institution, understanding what they need, understanding what they want, understanding how they struggle, and being able to translate that also to management so that we incorporate and make better policies to facilitate our teachers and to facilitate our educational institutions to become learning institutions. One of the first things that I did, for example, when I worked at the Center for Teaching and Learning at the University of Amsterdam, was introduce a campaign on teaching time savers. So, right, to help teachers save time in grading papers and creating multiple choice tests, exams, etc. So a CTL can also be a champion for a teacher to help them avoid this stress situation and better cope with the context within which they teach. I hope I've made my point on how we're trying to develop a national program and have educational institutions work together, learn faster within their institutions, but also across the Netherlands. And of course, I'm here also because we're very interested to exchange on a European and international level. I know Media and Learning are also looking into creating possibly some kind of facilitation as well, and we'd love to work together. I'm in touch with the German Digitalisierungshochschulforum, and they're also mobilizing efforts, so please join the movement and let's work together and share and learn faster. Thank you.